Dustin with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department, the oldest man in the room. Welcome to another of Wednesday's Humpday Hangouts. Our theme today is going to be attic fires, and our esteemed guests are going to relate their worst or most memorable attic fire mistake, because we're all human and we all make mistakes. But beforehand, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Key Fire Hose. That's keyfire.com. That's the hose that my department uses. That's the hose that is on my apparatus. We've talked in previous hangouts about the 1 3/4 hose and its durability and kink resistance. Let's talk a little bit about them 2.5 and 3-inch hose. Where I work in a urban environment, it takes nothing less than an army of cops to keep civilians from driving over our hose when we lay it out over a major thoroughfare. Our hose takes a beating, and what we usually end up doing is having to put up traffic cones at the couplings and just allow people to drive over our 2.5 and 3-inch hose. The Key hose could take a beating. Again, don't go cheap on hose. There's a lot more to consider than just price. When you're thinking about 2.5 and 3-inch hose, you need to think about, yes, it's heavy, but you got to be very careful with hose that is extremely lightweight, because you're usually substituting durability. Can vehicles drive over your hose repeatedly? In an urban environment, it's almost hard to avoid. So what we're going to do is begin with introducing each other. I'm a captain with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. Have been on that department for 38 years. Very proud to say my dad was a lieutenant on the Chicago Fire Department for 33 years. I began my fire service career in Wheaton, Illinois, and was a firefighter also in Naperville, Illinois. So I was a resident of Illinois. Now I am a resident of Florida, and I am very proud to say that I am now officially an honorary resident of Georgia, a citizen of Georgia. Saturday, I had the pleasure and the honor to speak for the Ronnie Thames Foundation, which benefits the Shriners Children's Burn Center hospitals. And at the end of the speech, a government official came up and issued me this proclamation. Bill Gustin is, by order of the Secretary of State of Georgia, an honorary Georgia citizen. So very proud to do that. Also very proud to speak on behalf of the Ronnie Thames Foundation and the Shriners Burn Center. They gave me some statistics which are absolutely incredible. Years ago, 20 years ago, when a child had third-degree burns over from 50 to 70% of their body, the mortality rate was about 92%. Now, because of their research, it's down to about 12%. So God bless them. God bless the Shriners and the Ronnie Thames Foundation. Captain Dugan, sir, the second oldest guy in the room. Could you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My name is Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the New York City Fire Department. I did 27 years in the New York City Fire Department. I also started as a volunteer in a small department called Hillside on Long Island, and I started in 1973 in the volunteers. We are here today, and we're going to talk about attic fires, but I told Bill before we went live about my experiences on 9/11, so he asked me to share a little bit with you. I was down at Ground Zero with my lovely wife. She came into the city with me, and we went to the memorial service up on Riverside Drive, which is all firemen, and they read the names of all the firemen, Port Authority police officers, 37 Port Authority police officers, 23 NYPD officers, 343. They also include some of the people who have now gone from cancers. I then hooked up with a good friend of mine, Paul Hagelin, who's a retired captain of Rescue 4, and we went down to Ground Zero for the sunset ceremony, which was tremendously done. It was very, very well done. And Paul and I were down there. Paul lost his brother, Danny Hagelin, who was also Paul's chauffeur for a little while on Rescue 4. Danny died a year and a half ago. I guess it's almost 2 years ago of 9/11 related cancers, esophageal cancer. He didn't see his 59th birthday. So we saw people down there, military from New Zealand, firefighters from France, firefighters from Germany, firefighters. I ran into a friend of mine from San Diego. My wife and I were out to dinner the night before, and a guy came up and said, "Hey, Cap Dugan, how are you? I'm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I met you at a conference out on the West Coast." And it's just amazing. The brotherhood, the sisterhood, the family of our family is just amazing. And the number of people that were there to celebrate the lives of our lost brothers and to keep that memory alive. Anybody who did show up, who thought of us, said a prayer for us, whatever else, thank you.
Thanks, Cap. And our newest Sam, if you could give a brief introduction and show us that nozzle.
You want me to go, Captain?
Yes, I do, sir.
All right. Lieutenant with Wichita Fire in Wichita, Kansas. That's about it. I don't have much more than that.
You got a lot more than that, or we wouldn't invite you to be in this hangout. You got a lot more than that, brother. You bring a lot to the table. You're being a little bit modest. So I've been reading your articles for years. I've stolen and plagiarized so much of your material, shamelessly, of course. And also, would you share with us that that nozzle that you had inscribed?
Oh, me. That was me.
Oh, Daryl, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Daryl. Go ahead and introduce yourself and just see that now.
So I'm Daryl Liggins. I'm a captain with the Oakland, California Fire Department. I'm at a firehouse that sits between the airport and the Oakland A's Raiders Stadium. And Clark, you might be stealing our Raiders team. You could have them, but we want to keep the Warriors. Anyway, piggybacking on 9/11, every year we, some friends of Andrew Frederick's and people that try and carry on the lessons that he taught a lot of people, including myself, we have a golf tournament. This year it's going to be in Rockland County, New York, the first week of October. I think it's the 2nd to the 4th. And it's a good time. It's a good time to meet people, talk about Andy, meet new people that are passionate firefighters. We have a dinner, a golf tournament, and my screen just went black there. Anyway, I wanted to say thanks to a friend of mine that works for Elkhart Brass, Chris Martin. He had this beautiful nozzle made up. And it says, Andy Fredericks, World Trade Center, 11 September 01, always making the stretch with us. And this is going to be an item that we auction off. I think he would really enjoy that. Anyway, I started my career also in a suburb of Oakland called Redwood City, a smaller fire department, spent 7 years there as a firefighter, an engineer, and then made the move over to Oakland in 99, where I've spent most of my time on engine companies there.
All right, Daryl, it's good to have you back, brother. We can't all make it every month, but it's great to have you back and be part of the team. Commander Lamping, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Clark Lamping from the Clark County Fire Department here in Southern Nevada. Most of you know us as Las Vegas, this little village. Truck and engine captain, Station 11. Been on Las Vegas Boulevard the majority of my career. Been with the Clark County Fire Department for coming up on 19 years now. Like Sam, that's about all I have. I don't have a nozzle or anything to show. So.
Well, I've got, I want to give a couple more shout outs. I bring this up the reason that Clark and I have become dear friends is that when my daughter moved to Las Vegas, we had no family unit, no contacts in Las Vegas, and Clark and his wife Bonnie kind of took my daughter Renee in as almost like their adopted daughter, and I'm very grateful for that. Similarly, my daughter recently moved to Cincinnati and is a speech pathologist with the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. So I reached out to the Brotherhood of Firefighters in Cincinnati, and I want to give a shout out and a sincere thanks to Tom LeCamp and Mike Kirby and Steve Pegram in the Cincinnati area for helping my daughter locate a apartment in a nice neighborhood and just helping her out. And it's always just so comforting to know that you've got a brother firefighter there. God forbid anything should happen. The other shout out I want to make is my daughter traveled to Australia and she stayed with a firefighter's family. And he's watching right now from Melbourne, Australia. That would be Rick Owen. He brought me back this hat, and I'm going to put it on because it's very stylish. And so, Rick, you're over there in Australia. Thanks very much for accommodating my daughter. Thanks for the hat, and so much for that. The topic today that we're going to discuss is attic fires. I think one of the most important lessons that a new firefighter can learn is how much fire you can have over your head and not know it. You can get yourself in trouble if you open a ceiling several feet inside where you made entrance and find out that you have fire over your head and behind you. So it looks to me like, before I relate my worst attic fire scenario, it looks to me like we have another guest that just appeared, and also he's showing an apparatus that happens to be the apple of my eye. I believe it is a Peter Persh ladder 2 from limestone. Would you be able to talk to us, Chief Halton?
I apologize. I have been, can you hear me, Bill?
I can hear you, sir.
Oh, great. I've been struggling with this technology. I apologize for being late. This is the Pierce Ladder 2 for the Limestone Fire Department. It's our guys are working on it. This is Greg Ewan here and his son Jeremy, and we've been cleaning it up today for the Hangout. We're going to be donating it to the Oklahoma Fire Museum, and just want to come by. I'm testing out this new technology because we're going to be doing a couple of live Hangouts where we're going to actually kind of walk around and look at a couple of different things. Bill and I will be in Dothan, Alabama at the Key Fire Hose, and we'll be Key Fire Hose plant, and we'll be actually walking about the factory and using this technology. So we're kind of trying to figure out if we're going to make people sick by doing this. We're also going to visit with our friends at Rescue Air in Arizona and look at some of their equipment and talk about that new technology. And so it's going to be pretty exciting. So we're trying to make sure that I can operate it. And obviously, due to the fact that it took me 1 hour and 45 minutes to break through changing my passcode, I had to call our IT department, and Aaron Pollock, God bless him, he put up with me and he got me on board here. So I won't ramble on too long, but we will be doing some of these live ones. And if you guys can tell me what you think of how this is working, the images look okay and all that kind of good stuff. And we're just working, just trying to make it a little more entertaining and a little more, interesting for all the viewers out there with these Hangouts. So this is my volunteer fire company. This is our station number 3, some of our apparatus. And so I just want to kind of show you guys around and thank you.
Yeah, I remember visiting that department, your department, at an advisory board meeting, and we did the push in of a new tanker, not a tender, a tanker. But the big attraction was that Peter Persh aerial. Everybody it was like toys to a kid, and everybody was attracted to that. It is a marvel of engineering. And I love that big Waukesha gasoline engine. So good to have you on board, boss. And
sorry again for barging in.
No, that worked great. That worked great. I think everybody.
I got a few real firefighters with me, so if there's questions I can't answer, I'll be like a presidential candidate, whisper the
Well-
answers in my ear, make me look smart.
Well, I got to tell you, I got a new best buddy.
It's just a reflection of the light of the camera.
I've got a new best buddy, and we've established quite the bromance, and that would be your brother there, Greg Hewen. And Greg, thank you for going over to that wood frame monster, or as Glenn Corbett would call it, the toothpick tower, brother, and taking those pictures. And what we're doing is we're preparing for a little training session that we're going to do there in the Tulsa area in November. And man, I'm looking forward to meeting you, Greg, and I'm looking forward to working with you, my brother. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to go ahead and begin with my, maybe it wasn't the worst experience I had with an attic fire. You know, it's one thing, fellas and ladies, if you hurt yourself. Okay, if you screw up and you hurt yourself. It's another when you make a mistake as an officer and you hurt your people. We responded on a fire in a ranch-style house, single-story ranch-style house, where a fellow was frying fish in a big fryer, kind of fried turkeys in, on his porch with an overhang, which the overhang was just part of the attic structure itself, overhanging his back porch. Oil was ignited, fire got up into that attic. My job was to take my company in and check the attic for extension. The house was clear as a bell, clear as a bell. So complacency set in. Our gloves were strapped to a Velcro strap right here. Our masks are hanging here. And we walk in, it's clear as a bell. We walk towards the Charlie side of the house, maybe 30 feet into the house. I asked the firefighter, put that hook in the ceiling and pull a hole. Don't see anything, nothing comes out. Pull it again. A large section of drywall comes down, and we go from clear as a bell to hot black smoke belching out of this opening. What did we do? We gave that fire that was burning with limited oxygen up in that attic space just what it needed to rapidly intensify. The black smoke went almost all the way to the floor level. I could feel the heat, and I'm thinking, we're all going to end up in the burn center or the cemetery because of my stupid mistake and my complacency. Again, it had to reinforce the lesson. How much fire you can have over your head and not realize it. When you suspect fire in an attic, you begin your examination holes someplace where you can jump out of the door or in the place of a two-story house, dive down the stairway. Don't make the same mistake I made. The other thing is, you suspect fire in an attic. When you pull the ceiling, unless you have a hose line, stop pulling the ceiling. Wait for an engine to get a hose line in there. You just continue to pull the ceiling, you're going to make the fire worse, not better. So that's my experience. Don't become complacent like I did. It's only through the grace of God, he had his hand on my shoulder, that I didn't burn myself and burn my company and probably destroy my career. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, Captain Mike. Do you have a memorable attic or Cockloft story for us?
Yeah, I did. We had a fire, and it was an odor of smoke. And what we did was we went into this apartment. It was the sixth floor of a multi-family, multi-unit. There were 18 apartments per floor, so it's a big, big building, huge roof. And we go in, and it's this Jamaican guy, and he's like, I smell smoke. And I'm like, yeah, I get a little whiff, but it doesn't seem like anything. He says, yeah, but I also see smoke. And I said, okay, where? I don't see anything. And he takes me outside on the fire escape, and there's a little scupper, an air vent for the Cockloft or the attic space, whatever you want to call it. We call it a Cockloft. In the city of New York, if you can't, an attic you can get into. A Cockloft you cannot. So we go, and I see this Cockloft vent, and every once in a while it pushes out a little smoke. And the chief, great chief, is like, okay, 18, which means one engine, one truck, for an odor of smoke, 1024. odor, no, whatever, for an odor of smoke. And I said, no, hang on a second, Chief. Hang on. And he goes, okay. I said, I want to go in. So now what I had been taught to do, which was from somebody who was a lot smarter than me, is instead of pulling large holes in the ceiling, have the member with the hook turn it upside down and use the butt end of the hook and pop a hole. We popped the hole, and of course, what did we have? The blown-in cellulose insulation, and you know that's a problem. So I said, okay, give me another one right next to it, a little bit. We pulled, and then I had him put the hook up in there and pull, and he pulled down a little bit. And again, like you said, the black smoke came down. Where we did it was into the apartment, so we had a way to get back out towards the door. I said to the chief, we got something here. And he said, okay. I said, start a line to the top floor, and they did. And we started pulling when the line got there, and we ended up having, it was a fourth alarm. At one point when they cut the roof, because of the blown-in insulation, they could see the fire was about 45 feet over the roof. We burnt off the whole roof of this building pretty much. It's happened to me numerous times with the blown-in insulation around the light fixture. Heats up and everything. You're not sure. Have your equipment, have your gear ready, have your thermal imager. And the thing that I learned at this fire, which was my roof man was just brilliant. He says, Cap, you're not seeing anything here. Give me the camera. I'll take it up on the roof. So I had one of the guys take the camera up to him up on the roof, and he looked and he goes, there's a ton of fire up here, Cap. It's red on the camera up on the roof. He goes, there's a ton of fire up here. I said, okay, start cutting the roof. And as soon as he cut it, put a saw blade in it, fire came out. We gave it enough oxygen. I'm like, yeah, you're going to need a lot of help up here, Chief. And the chief was also very thankful because we made him look good by not letting him, because we would have been back in a half an hour. And it would have been a major screw up. It would have been that chief's career.
You brought up a real interesting point, a very important point. When you have multiple ceilings in an older building that's been renovated, or what we see very commonly in the Miami area is a rain roof, one roof over another, or where an addition's roof overlaps the original roof line, Captain Mike. Your first indication of heavy fire in an attic or cockloft may be from the roof. From the roof. So therein is a great lesson, the coordination and the communication between the fella that's working up above you and you working below. And if his size up is different than yours, well, somebody's got it wrong. And it may be because you've got 9 inches of insulation in the attic and you don't see anything. So that's an excellent point. We have to learn from our mistakes and wear our big boy pants and admit our mistakes so we can learn from each other. Now, Sam Hiddle from Wichita, can you give us, I know that you probably never made a mistake in your life, Sam. I mean, you're a pretty perfect guy. We all know that. But if you, could you relate a memorable attic fire experience for us, Sam? You're muted. You're muted, Sam.
Yeah, there we go. Can you hear me now?
You sure can.
Okay. It goes back to what you initially said. It's one of those things is, you know, if we make a mistake, it's one thing, but when we make decisions that can affect the whole company, those are the lessons you really take to heart. And I would say one of the most memorable recent things is making a bad decision on that walkable roof. You pull up at night, you don't have good lighting, you've got smokes coming out of the eaves, and get into those walkable, non-walkable roofs, and you make that decision to walk it without a roof ladder, and you lay some sawdust down on it, and now you've got a pretty good sled. So what I learned from that, we were up there, and I told my guy, I said, hey, you can't move your foot. You've got to take what you can get. And we kind of slid back down on our butts. We got a good hole out of it. But what I learned from that was to no longer look at the roof. Now, when I'm trying to make that decision, I look at the gable. Looking at a roof line is very difficult, but if you look at the gable, then you're going to be able to see that pitch a lot better.
Yes, and you know, that's something I read years ago from one of my mentors, Chief John Mittendorf, that when you look at a roof line or the pitch of the roof, it always looks less pitched when you're looking at it from below. And Sam, looking at it from the gabled end, is a much greater, a much more reliable indicator, and a good lesson learned, a good lesson learned. Now, I don't know if this guy here, Daryl Liggins from Oakland, I don't know if he knows anything about attic fires. Do they have attic fires in Oakland, California, Daryl?
Well, honestly, when we came up with this topic, most of my experience with attic fires are not just traditional attic fires. They're usually like in a knee wall void. Most of our buildings are balloon frame construction, and just because of the population density, those attics have been converted into living space. And so I don't have actually a lot of experience with just a regular attic fire. I got more of that even in my when I worked in the suburban department. But I wanted to share a couple of stories. One actually was just told to me by my lieutenant. We were on probation together. We were classmates. And he had a similar story to what you shared, Bill. He was in a ranch-style house, which we don't have too many of, but it was in the hills. Entered a house that was absolutely clear. They had some smoke showing from the eaves. They don't know if it's a roof fire or if there's fire in the attic. Enter the house. There's a number of firefighters in there, face pieces hanging down, absolutely clear. Move the scuttle hole. They could see that there's some dense smoke in there. So where I work, also most of the garages are detached garages, but this house happened to be, like I said, ranch style and attached garage. A company opened the garage door that allowed that linked the flow path right there. That garage door had a access to the attic that was open. Wind was blowing against that door. And he said it was just lights out. They were in this hallway that was absolutely clear, to just smoke blowing down through there and everybody scrambling to get their face pieces on. So it does remind you to be ahead of the game and have these face pieces on before you ever enter this. It seems like you can get pulled into a false sense of security because everything is above you. And one of my mistakes was, I would just say it's salvage. I recall a few times and one in particular where we enter a house and I'm looking at this gorgeous bedroom and we have an attic fire. This is not an occupied space. It's a time we can kind of slow down and cover things in the house, but we just go in there, pull, ceiling, spray water, and at the end of the fire, I mean, the place is absolutely a wreck. There was a computer, cameras, photographs, books, just totally destroyed. And it seems like it would have a lot of benefit to now go in with those salvage covers, throw it over some material before we start wrecking the place, and that can add a lot of value. And I'll tell one more quick story, not a long story, but especially with balloon frame construction, if you have a fire in the attic, you need to check below the basement and the floors below, because you may have a fire lower than where you are.
Excellent point. And we're going to talk about the approaches from underneath or from above. And like you say, we walk into a house that's pristine and we end up trashing the place. Clark Lamping. And oh yeah, it's time for a plug for Key Fire Hose, which comes from the heart for me. We talked about the durability. That you can, it's not a good idea to drive vehicles over your fire hose, but sometimes it can't be avoided, and where I work, you can't avoid it. The other thing, we was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and they have a 60-story building that the fire pumps have a churn pressure of 425 psi. The building's over 400 feet high. All right, now if those pumps were to fail, we would have to duplicate that pressure, that fire pump churn pressure, 425 psi. Is your hose up to the task? I just happen to be reading some stats here on Key. Combat ready, your 2.5-inch hose has a service test of 500 psi with a burst pressure of 1200 psi. The 3-inch has a service test of 400 psi with a burst pressure of 1200 psi as well. There are special sections of hose that are made specifically for super high rises. Depending upon the heights of the buildings in your jurisdiction, you probably won't need them as long as you have good quality hose like the Key and the Key Combat Ready. Greg,
And if I could
Yes, sir.
interject, if I could interject for a moment there, Bill. Bill and I will be live from Key's factory in Dothan, Alabama this October, I believe the 11th, Bill. And
Yes.
we'll be broadcasting a special Google Hangout with a tour of the facility. We'll be talking about hose and hose issues, hose construction, deployment issues. So we'll be doing a hangout. We're going to invite all of our panelists here, as well as we'll have a couple of key representatives with us. And we really thank them for their continued support, as well as our good friends at Rescue Air who are supporting these programs. And we couldn't do this without them. And I thank you also for your indulgence on my messing with the technology again today. If it's okay with the panel, I'd like to take another spin about at the end of the program.
Okay.
And also I'd like to add a third profile, Bill. You talked about coming from below. You talked about coming from above. But in many, many homes today, including the one I currently reside in, I actually have a man door at the top of my stair landing into my attic space.
really? So
Yes, sir. A full-size
not-
man door.
it's not a habitable attic. It's not like a finished half story.
No, sir, it is not finished at all. It's basically plywood. Of course, I've got the usual array of debris in there that my wife and I have collected over the years.
Right.
Everything from Santa Claus and the reindeers to my golf clubs to everything else you could imagine under the sun. My wife makes the Collier brothers look like pikers
Right.
when it comes to saving things like boxes and such. So
Maybe your boxers.
yeah, boxes that things
Oh,
came in.
boxers.
She's
Oh,
a firm believer in the warranty. Don't ever tell her there's a warranty on a product. She'll keep the dang box for 10 years just in case it breaks at 9 years and 11 months to send it back to you to demand a new one. We actually have 4 vacuums from the same company because something breaks each time with the warranty and they don't want the vacuum back. They send her a new one. So
okay. So I just want to get this straight. Your wife saves boxes and boxes of your boxers up in the attic. Is that right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Greg Hewen.
Yes.
Without any prep, if you don't mind, let's talk about lightning strikes. Not that there would ever be any lightning in Oklahoma. A lightning strike is notorious for attic fires, and in my experience, it's more than one point of origin. Could you relate any of your experience with lightning strikes starting attic fires in your area?
Yeah, we still have a lot of communities here that still have the old TV antennas up on the roof, and of course, this is a factor for introducing lightning to your house. But
Lost that house forever and also.
yeah, we've lost one here in our community in the last couple of months.
Yeah, our mutual aid partner we lost an entire, I believe it was a 3,200 square foot structure from a lightning strike just 2 weeks ago.
It's a huge problem in Florida, and it begs the question. We've got fire burning in the sheathing up at the top of the roof. Do we go inside and pull ceiling and trash the house, or do we attack the fire from above? And there's pros and cons to each situation. But there's Daryl was talking about the salvage issue. We roll in and we have a complaint of an attic full of smoke. We go up into the attic scuttle, and yeah, it's full of white smoke. We take that thermal imager and we look across the attic, and we see the heat signature of, say, a junction box, electrical junction box, or a recessed light fixture. Okay, in that case, like Daryl was talking about, hey, this fire's not going anywhere that soon. Go to where the fire is, remove the furniture, remove the pictures from the walls, the mirrors, salvage cover what you can't move. Go. Every community now has these big garbage cans with the garbage trucks that mechanically dump the garbage. So go get a couple of those big cans and meticulously remove that drywall. The drywall and the insulation should never have to hit the floor. It should go right from your hand, right into the garbage can. Meticulously put that in there and go about your business in a professional way. I think that we're all have been, I hear you, Mike. Go ahead. Talk to me, brother.
Just one thing, Bill. The first thing I tell people, and it goes with the lightning strikes, and it goes with what you're talking about with the junction box and the blown in, kill the power first.
Yeah.
Okay? Stop it from that. And a lot of us, and I have made the mistake of not doing it. That's why I remember, because it's drilled in my own mind. I got my guys up there pulling stuff, and all of a sudden the guy's got the metal hook, and he's like, I zapped myself. Put on my part for letting us down, letting my guys down. Kill the power first. Lightning strike, attic fires, anything else. Because of that, kill the power first.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. And we're setting ourselves up to get zapped too, because we're pulling ceiling with the steel New York roof hooks. And sooner or later, if we fail to adequately kill the power, and sometimes in some of the neighborhoods where I work, folks can get a little bit ingenious when it comes to how they do their wiring. It's not always up to code, and sometimes it's not cut and dried whether we cut the power or not. So, yeah,
and we need to be very. We need to also brief our medics and our fire folks about electrocution injuries. We ran a great article in Fire Engineering. I believe it was last month, or perhaps it's this month, because I always read them a few months in advance. But there was a firefighter, I believe it was in, I can't remember the department in Texas, but they were running with the Louisville guys, and he leaned up against a washing machine that was still energized, and he felt a shock, but he didn't go down. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like we'd expect. And what happened with his electrocution injury was it caused internal damage and very debilitating, did a lot of damage to his internal organs, and he went through many years, I believe it was, in order before he got it correctly diagnosed as an electrocution injury. Luckily, he had documented that he'd gotten a shock on the fire ground, so they could trace it back to it. But the electrocution injuries are kind of interesting things, and I'm not a medic. I played one on a unit for many years. Many people suffered at my hands. Perfectly healthy people dropped dead walking by me when I wore my paramedic costume. So I'm not the source, but I will tell you that I think we need to do more research. I think the fire service needs to ask for more research into electrocution type injuries and how to better detect them, because I'll bet you many more firefighters have been afflicted as this young man was in Texas. I hope perhaps one of our editors who are listening could pull the edition and send it to me so I could tell people where to reference that article. He will be speaking at FIC about his trials and tribulations.
We had a firefighter, and then he got promoted. He was my engineer when I was working at 23 Engine. I forgot about this story till you were telling about it. He was in West Oakland in a Victorian. They had an attic fire. He squeezed up into the attic with a hose line, and that line touched some knob and tube wiring, and he just blacked out, lost consciousness. Another firefighter was right below them on a folding ladder, helped get them down, and he just had completely lost consciousness and didn't even remember the event. They got him all the way out front, and he would tell you he almost died twice on this fire, because once they get him down into the yard, a member of a ladder company ended up losing control of their New York roof hook, and that came falling off the building and nearly struck him while he was on the lawn. But having that power shut off is really important in these attic fires. Absolutely. We're going to end up crawling around up there and sticking hooks and spraying water and he got electrocuted just from the hose line.
Fellas, we've learned the hard way. Tragically, very tragically, we had a member of the City of Miami Fire Department was doing some electrical work in his attic and was electrocuted and lost his life. And now the lesson learned is you respond to a call where you have somebody unconscious in an attic. Suspect that it could be an electrocution. Commander Lamping, sir, any of your thoughts on attic fires? Any experiences, lessons learned, mistakes made?
Yes, I was young in my career as a firefighter, and we responded to a ranch-style home, and it was a contents fire. Extinguished the fire, full alarm showed up, and we looked inside the attic. I didn't actually look inside the attic, and they used, in this particular home, ground-up newspaper for the insulation, is what they had inside the attic. And I don't know how deep it was. Like I said, I'd never actually laid eyes on the material, but I heard the guys talking about this, and I'd never heard of that before. I'd never seen it before. So we were released from that fire, and 3 hours later, it was a minor fire when we left. 3 hours later, full alarm goes back, and we managed to burn the whole roof off of that home because fire was in that insulation. This is before we had thermal imaging cameras. We didn't overhaul properly, and that is a very, very important lesson to me. I always inspect the material. I just don't tell, now I'm an officer, I just don't tell my firefighters, inspect the attic. I'd make them tell me, what is the insulation? What is it blown in? Is it rolled in? Let me know what it is, and that's how I'm going to assess how much overhaul we're going to have to do. So very valuable lesson on my part.
There's two types of blown-in insulation. There is fiberglass, which is not combustible, and then there is cellulose, which is essentially ground-up newspapers and cardboard boxes. Yes, it has been treated with some type of borate or sulfate or something that actually adds to its toxicity. It is not entirely non-combustible. It has a propensity for smoldering for hours or days after a fire. I've got a great story to tell you and a lesson learned about cellulose insulation, because we have come back for rekindles. It's notorious for that.
I'll tell you a quick lesson learned. If you get a CO odor or a detector that goes off detecting CO, and you're getting any detectable levels, check the attic also. I had one where the insulation had been smoldering for some time. There was no odor of smoke, no smoke detectors went off, nothing visible, but when we checked the scuttle hole, it's like, oh, we've definitely got smoke up here, and the blown-in insulation was smoldering that cellulose insulation.
Daryl, that's the story I was going to say, and you're reading my mind. It's a very short story, but you're reading it. A good friend of mine, Chris Ackerman, is a newly promoted chief. He recognizes that he has a fire in an attic involving cellulose insulation, so he tells his guys, we're going to be here for quite some time. The clue that something was still smoldering is he couldn't get the CO levels in the haze. He had a CO detector with him. He couldn't get the CO levels to drop. Hence, it's indicative that there's a smoldering fire someplace under the surface of the cellulose insulation. If you've never had a fire involving cellulose insulation, first of all, if you're not sure what you got, take a handful of it, take it outside. And if you have cellulose, you have to be very, very careful, because it tends to tunnel underneath the surface and away from the source of ignition. Also, you can have more than one source of ignition if you hit it with a screen and some of the sparks jump over to another portion of the attic. Cellulose insulation is similar to balloon framing in the sense that recognizing the potential problem is half of solving it. From Wichita, Kansas, do you have any horror stories about cellulose insulation?
I would just say one of the problems is we like to take that thermal imager up there, and we think that that thermal imager is going to tell us everything we need to know. If you take the thermal imager into an attic, take the broom with you. Brush everything away from your electrical boxes, your wiring. Identify if you have conduit. It's probably been 10 years ago, but we had an attic fire, and the conduit actually ended up catching the adjacent unit on fire a day later. So again, a lesson learned. And while I've got the microphone, if you don't mind, I'd like to mention something about the hooks. You know, we're talking about being deceived. One of the things we did with our metal roof hooks, our New York hooks, is wrap them with electrical tape before we wrapped them. Just like you can wrap the end of electrical wire with electrical tape and touch it. And then got a hold of an electrician friend of mine, and we went out and tested it. And what we ended up realizing, without giving it much thought, luckily we didn't have to learn it the hard way, was what happens when we start hook and sealing. We talked about it earlier in the program. We want to have water, at least a can or a hose line present, right? So even if you're using a fiberglass hook, once that thing gets wet, you're still going to get electrocuted. Don't think you're safe.
Well, Sam, did you see a reduction in the conductivity when you use the electrical?
We did.
Really? Now, you know, my
Until we
guys
added-
like to wrap, they use tubing, oxygen tubing, and they wrap their tools, and then they cover it with electrical tape. And but that never occurred to me that could possibly cut down on the conductivity. Now, having said that, it's no substitute for making sure that everything the power's been cut. But listen, if everything was perfect in this world, they wouldn't be calling the fire department in the first place. If I could just talk about one of the, I'm going to show you some pictures here real quickly. I just kicked this is a soffit. This is an eave of a funeral home where we had a fire. And can you see the gusset plates? Can you see the truss? And can you see the underside of the roof sheet?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so unless it's mice playing with matches, something had to start this fire in this enclosed space. There's no external source of ignition, but there's no wires. And it's not a lightning strike. A little closer view. See the nails from the flashing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here's the nails, and this one is really telling. Look at the nail that has been almost completely arced through, and this is the pyrolized, charcoalized, that's not a word, that's my word. It's been turned into charcoal.
You're a technical editor now, Bill. You can make up words.
Okay. This was flashing that was in contact with energized electrical service drop conduit below the weatherhead. The flashing was energized. And the shame of it is, and this is another mistake I made, is in December of last year, we had a fire in this funeral home. And the proprietor begged me not to cut the power because he had 2 cadavers on the examination or the embalming table and a couple more in the refrigerators, and he had a viewing. So he persuaded me not to have the power company pull the meter with the understanding that he promised me that he would take care of the electrical problem. Well, April of this year, guess what? We go back because I failed to remove the cause of the fire, which was there was electricity leaking somewhere. He wanted to keep dead people safe. No, but I will tell you this. I almost got in trouble because I got on the radio and advised command. Now, there's no more live people in here that we've accounted for. But the number one reason why we investigate fires is to make sure that we've removed the cause. And I failed to do that. You have a fire in a wall, in wire lath, gusset plates, under a floor, in an attic, and you don't have electrical wire, and there's no source of external ignition unless it's mice playing with matches. It is an electrical fire. It's electricity with an affinity to find the ground that is following the pipes, following, in my case, hurricane straps on the trusses, gusset plates, wire lath, anything it can to find the ground. Bobby, did you want to show us some more pictures from the firehouse there?
Yeah, I was going to walk about while we're having
Okay,
our
let's go
discussion.
walk about.
I think some of the things we should maybe discuss while I'm doing this is as we talk about, the fire problem in attics, some of the alternative strategies with some folks have been, dropping Bresnan distributors lately through roofs and other alternative tactics, filling the void space up with foam. And as you can see here, this is our brush truck. I'm gonna try to go with this view, maybe it'd be a little better. This is our brush truck and outfitted with a little tank. This is, we get a lot of wildland grass fires, but one of the things that we've been really proactive with here under the leadership of our Chief Smith, this is we call it a tanker, but you can also call it a tender. We call it a tanker. We've actually, the advisory board helped push this one in. You guys remember this truck, Bill?
Yes, and I prefer tanker over tender, sir.
That's it. You can see we proudly have tanker 3 on there. So, but one of the things that we have done, I'll make Bill happy by walking by that beautiful 71 Persh one more time. She's absolutely gorgeous. And I apologize, I'm not the steadiest man in the world. So if I'm jiggling around a little bit here, it's just old age.
Yeah.
It's an ailment that Bill and I both suffer from. Dugan apparently has the Rip Van Winkle syndrome because he just keeps getting younger. But one of the things that we've been very proactive with here under our leadership, and let me get around to the panel, is that all of the engines that we've been ordering here are cabs. And we use it pretty effectively on those attic fires, with all kinds of different delivery systems. So it's been a real bonus for us. I just want to give you a little very easy to use, easy to set up.
Chief, it looks to me like you have your discharges. Would the valve handle for those 2 discharges be the same color as the discharges?
That's correct.
The idea? All right, man.
I like that. Yeah.
That's correct.
I like that a lot.
And you can.
And that's a Darley apparatus.
Yes, this is a Paul Darley apparatus, and
right. And since they advertise in fire engineering, I guess it's okay for us to say that's a highly reliable, good piece of equipment.
It's a fantastic piece of equipment, and
it is.
One of the things that you can say unequivocally, and as Bill mentioned, there you see the color coding.
Yeah, I like that.
All done up correctly on our discharges, as well as plates that say discharge 3. But you can see where it says deck gun with cabs on our deal here. But Paul has been very, very supportive of our organization, as he is with all organizations. You can find Paul's phone number on his advertisements because he is that confident of the customer service that Darley provides, as do many of the fire service representatives that advertise with fire engineering and FDIC, and we have many, many great, proud partners. This is an F550 that we have set up here. This is a nice little light rescue truck that gets a lot of work here for us, and we staff with 2 paid guys during the day, and the rest of it's 100% volunteer, weekends and nights, and proud to be a member of this fine organization. And Greg wants to
make sure we point this out for Bill that we've got a 2.5-inch pre-connects.
Try to get there we go. 2.5-inch pre-connect, Bill.
So, hey, I'm all about that, man. I'm all about that. And if I could just get, there's a certain department in the western part of the United States, I won't mention, it seems to have an aversion to using that as their first line on commercial properties. I'm not going to mention any names or all, but it's kind of obvious to me. I keep seeing video, and I've actually been there and seen it. So, but you guys get it, Limestone. God bless you.
Thank you.
Get it. And, this is something. Sometimes it is easier to affect change and become progressive on smaller departments than it is big departments that it takes almost like an act of Congress. Now, I like that rig right there. Is that a Polaris?
Yeah, that's a little Polaris. I know Clark would
Like that.
recognize this. Very commonly used in a lot of the urban environments like Las Vegas, where Clark battles with some of the most intricate building styles and diversity in the world. Just visiting with him, if you look at the buildings that just surround his firehouse, the construction types and occupancy loads far exceed anything else in the country. And getting in and about some of those events, these alternative type vehicles, like the little Gator we have set up here with a little reel line on the back of it. She's set up to handle foam, but you can see we even have a snow blade on the back of it. Very versatile, very nice little piece of equipment. That we're able to deploy very rapidly here in our first due district, as well as about other parts of the state. Limestone has been honored to respond to several major events in the last couple of years, where we've actually gone out to silo grain bin fires and things like that, where we've been able to use our foam capabilities. With Greg's direction, I'll have Greg on here. Tell him about that silo fire real quick that you had, Greg, and let me get a better angle on you.
We had about 180-foot silo fire up in Acton, Oklahoma, and it was actually a concrete silo, and as it had been burning for like 2 weeks, and the heat was so intense that as they were trying to put water into the silo to extinguish it, it was causing the concrete on the walls to scald and turn loose. So they were losing the integrity of the entire silo, which once again was 180 feet tall. So the company got in touch with the engineer, and his recommendation was to find a department that ability so that they could put the foam in there with less water to effectively extinguish the fire, but not damage the integrity. So they contacted Tulsa Fire Department. Tulsa gave them our number. Like I said, it had been burning for 2 weeks. I got up there with a driver and a firefighter. We started applying foam, compressed air foam, and we came home at 7 o'clock at night, and the fire was completely extinguished.
Yep.
So,
And we're also the volunteer fire department that was featured on YouTube when we were at a gas manufacturing plant where the tanks blew up on us, and 2 of our members just
No, it was an
barely escaped
asphalt
the-
plant, wasn't it?
Asphalt plant, that's correct.
Asphalt
And,
plant, yeah. That
just
got your
dodged the
attention.
bullet. You can see here where we've got our washer dryers set up for our gear. We keep our gear clean, and if you take a look at our gear rack here, we try to keep it out of the light. This is a little overexposed. We're going to be changing this soon to where our gear will not be exposed to your gear can be exposed to fluorescent lighting, causes degradation. But you can see we're very strict about the cleaning of the gear. The gear is always kept clean and dry, and there's backup gear available for everybody. And now we're working on how to manage our gloves, because we've recognized that our gloves, of all the equipment that we have, our gloves is one piece of equipment that probably gets the most soiled and contaminated, and yet it's the equipment that we least often rotate through the system or clean, because as you all know, when you wash a pair of gloves, they just don't seem to fit right afterwards. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, and many other issues that plague just about every other fire department in the country. But thankfully we're talking about them. We're sharing ideas. We're making advances where we can, and trying to be as open with our issues as everybody else is with theirs. And it's really an honor to be part of this organization. And huge thanks to Greg and the guys for letting me, an old man, come out and play from time to time.
Chief Holton.
Every reason to be very proud of that department. Fellas, we're up against the clock here.
Hey, Chief Holton, real quick, Bill, just one thing for Chief Holton.
Go ahead.
Hey, Chief Holton, you still there?
I'm right here, Mike.
Hey, listen, one of the things we found out with the gloves that might be of interest to you is we found out they don't shrink during washing, they shrink during drying. And what we did was we would dry them naturally with either, I used dog food because I have dogs, dog food cans cut open on both ends to allow the air to get into the fingers, hold the hands up. and we would allow them to air dry, and it tends to limit the shrinking.
That's a
Great.
good idea.
Now, Bobby, you were saying that
Yes,
the
sir.
fluorescent light causes degradation of the gear. You think that's what happened to my face over the years, that the fluorescent light caused a degradation of my face?
Yes, obviously there's been some kind of UV damage that's occurred
Yes.
in varying
Yeah.
parts. But in fact, it just enhances the ruggedly handsome aspects of your overall
Oh, yeah.
demeanor.
Yeah.
I would have to say the name Stan Kowalski jumps to mind as I look at you from Gran Torino. All you need is a 38 Magnum in your pocket there, and you'd be the perfect stand-in for Eastwood.
Hey, I know we're running a little late, but let's do just a closing thought, starting with Captain Lamping. Clark, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, one common theme I heard over and over today when we were all discussing our near misses and situations we had during attic fires was complacency. It seems like we've all got caught with our pants down because we were complacent. And also I heard a couple members talk about how they entered a structure and it was perfect visibility, not even a wisp of smoke. How many line and duty deaths have we read that stated companies entered the structure not even masked up because there was no smoke in the structure? For some reason, some catastrophic event happened that we went from perfect visibility to zero visibility, smoke to the floor in a matter of seconds. And guys who had walked in, they didn't have taglines, they got off the hose line, or they weren't even masked up, got caught, and they died inside these structures. So that is one theme that I noticed today. Don't be complacent. Expect fire above you. Let's not be another statistic, brothers, please.
Daryl Liggins, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, a couple. One is if you do want a chance to try and win this in that silent auction at the golf tournament, at the beginning I didn't mention where to find it, but you can probably just Google Andy Frederick's golf tournament, and if you could be in the Rockland area the first week of October, you do not have to golf. You can just have to know how to hack up grass with a club and you'll be fine. The other thing is we talked a lot about the metal hooks, and I still don't know what's wrong with a good old wooden handled pike pole for pulling ceiling. They're great on a roof. That's what they were designed for, but don't be afraid of a wooden handled pike pole. They're great. And that's pretty much it. Expect that there might be fire below you when you have fire in an attic. And if you don't know what knee wall voids are, look it up. Even newer communities sometimes have an old building that have knee wall voids. And if you're looking to get some more information, we didn't touch on attacking it from above or below or the side as much as I know we would have liked to, but you can go to YouTube and look at UL Firefighter Safety. They have their own channel and they have a lot of videos of them doing experiments over at UL.
Daryl, you know how I am. I'm very, very ambitious with our topics. We're going to beat this dead horse for several other sessions. This thing with the knee walls, we just scratched the surface. So I think this bears repeating. I think we could go one or two more sessions. Van Hiddle from Wichita, Kansas. Any closing comments, sir?
I would just say, on inspections, if it was on fire, we would go at it from all sides. And when you're inspecting, do the same thing. Get above it, get underneath it, and get off to the side and make sure that you're seeing what you think you are. And part of that is understanding and appreciating the fallacies of using a thermal imager. We've had guys go up on commercials and they're trying to determine if the plenum has fire in it. And they look at it with the thermal imager and say everything's good. Well, of course it is. I mean, if you see a heat signature through 12 inches of styrofoam insulation on a commercial roof, you've got really big problems. So learn how to cheat that. Look at soil pipes for sagging. Look at soil pipes for temperature differences.
Sam, excellent points. And, You sell yourself short. You bring a lot to the table, brother, and that's why we invite you to these hangouts. Captain Dugan, sir, any closing thoughts?
Yes, sir. I think that, as you said, we have a lot more to go over on this, and this is just a brief overview, and we're going to do a lot more of it next month and hopefully the following month. But I would like to say attic fires, we get a lot of people hurt. We have a lot of careers upset by missing things at attic fires. Every person on the rig, everybody on the scene is responsible to check all around them to make sure they size everything up. The person going up to the roof, if you're not sure, listen, make a hole. Okay, open it up, find out. Don't assume. Okay, no. And then check what's going on all around you and be aware and be prepared. As Clark said, a lot of guys get injured being complacent, and we've all been there, and I got the scars to prove it. Don't be complacent. Don't be silly. Wear your stuff and protect yourself.
Doug Hewen, Chief Bobby Halton, any closing thoughts, comments?
Yeah, two quick points that I want to bring forward. The fire service is history and literature is full of tremendous examples of confined spaces, void spaces above our heads, attics, cocklofts, where the products of combustion have built up tremendous pressure, whether it's Pressure Space Tabernacle, Southwest Supermarket, even the Sofa Superstore, to where once that ceiling gave out and dropped down, tremendous amounts of products of combustion have filled the space, dropping visibility to zero, dropping tremendous heat and debris and whatnot. Those suspended ceilings become spider webs. That's the first point. The literature is full of it. So it's always of tremendous concern to know that you have fire above your head. And to Sam's point, that was an excellent point about it. The soil pipe is off gassing. If the commode is on fire, you got a big issue. So, but also always remember when we're talking about these spaces, those are confined spaces. Those should be treated as such. They're not meant for human habitation for a reason. They're not set up with the drywall and everything else that we normally fight fire in. So although there are man doors out here in these newer homes that are being built, virtually everyone being built around us that exceeds and has a second floor has a walk-in access at the top of that stairwell. So it's going to be interesting as time goes on to document some of the alternative tactics that are used and some of the problems that we find due to this easy access.
Greg, I'm sorry I called you Doug, but Greg, any closing thoughts?
One thing about when we start talking about attics and this monster that you and I have been talking about, Bill, that we call lightweight construction, if we're in a residence, if we're standing down in the room of contents looking up, at lightweight construction, we're looking up at the ceiling joist, which has the sheetrock attached, which has 12 inches of insulation blown in on top of it. It may be engineered for that, but once we get up in the attic, and if we move around and we're bunked out in our PPE with an SCBA and a charged hose line, there's a lot of times this lightweight construction is not quite engineered for all of that. So I think that's one thing we need to keep in mind when we're doing investigation and things, that, if we can pull some ceiling down and investigate, a lot of times it's quicker and easier, and it's safer with this lightweight construction than having to get up there in that attic and be looking around. For one thing, a lot of times these ceiling joists are just made of 2x4s held together with gusset plates. So we got 3.5 inches of wood that's hidden underneath 12 inches of blown in insulation. We don't even know where we're going sometimes. We don't even know which direction the ceiling joists are running once we get up in the attic. So I think it's something that we have to be careful. And like I said, I think this lightweight construction is a monster, and we're fighting it too.
Well, I've got a homework assignment for everybody. Go to the UL website and look at the UL attic fire studies, the tests that were done in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with knee walls, soffit fire attack. The other is all of us should take a look at I believe it's on the fire engineering web. I know it's on the secret list. The dust explosion that occurred the day before yesterday, I believe it was, in British Columbia, Canada. I want to thank our sponsors, keyfire.com. Easy endorsement for me, as I always say. The best mix of weight, durability, kink resistance, and flow capability. You can't do better than Key. That's Key Fire Hose, Key Hose, or keyfire.com. Until next month, where we will be live from LA, Lower Alabama, Dothan, Alabama. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you. And we'll see you next month.